What a year 2022 was. International travel finally returning to some sort of normality, and the wearing of masks was gradually reduced. It was a big year for me personally, as I wanted to make up for the lack of activity in the previous years. I managed to get to some amazing locations, mostly within the Middle East region, and captured a lot of footage, including time-lapse videos. In this video, I'd like to share some of my experiences from the past 12 months, including my 5 best and 5 worst time-lapse projects of the year. What made them great to work on, including the efforts made to get to certain locations, and why some didn't turn out quite as expected. Also, there will be a couple of special mentions, including some experimental projects I had the opportunity to try. So let's get into it. Okay, so first up, it's the edge of the world view along the Tuwaiq escarpment. This is west of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. This place is developing as a really great tourist spot and has amazing views, especially at sunset. However, my attempted time-lapse sequence didn't quite go according to plan. Firstly, I was way too late setting up. It was a really bad choice of composition and simply not a very interesting scene. In 5th place for my favourite time-lapse project of the year is this view across the diplomatic area of Manama in Bahrain. At first I thought this would end up in the bin, as there was so many technical issues and things that went badly wrong, including these floodlights in the foreground that unexpectedly turned on after sunset. Pretty much ruined, or potentially ruined, the entire scene. However, this ended up becoming a time-lapse tutorial that I put together, detailing how I managed to salvage the entire sequence. So far it's done reasonably well on YouTube, so all in all it was probably worth doing, and it was a really good learning curve as well. For this project I actually used the auto time-lapse technique, which was in the tutorial, and all in all it came out quite well in the end, so I was fairly pleased. So the 4th worst time-lapse of the year has to be Hatta in the United Arab Emirates. Hatta is in the eastern region of the country near the border with Oman. It's a very mountainous region in complete contrast to the desert regions further west of the country. I was hoping for some kind of dramatic scenery, but unfortunately it turned out to be quite bland. There was no clouds. Overall, probably just a bad composition and just a fairly uninteresting surroundings, which made for a bland and boring time-lapse sequence, really. Really wanted to get the sign in the background, and we wanted to get a nice day to night transition, and unfortunately it just didn't really work out, so this time-lapse didn't really go very far. Now, the 4th best time-lapse of the year was the work I did at the Saudi Arabian Founding Day celebrations at a place called Ithra near the eastern city of Dammam. This was the inaugural celebrations of a newly created national holiday introduced by the government in 2022. I actually did 5 or 6 different time-lapse sequences around the building, all while it was still very busy with visitors. I wanted to try and capture a sense of celebration with lots of people moving in front of the camera, with using a very slow shutter speed to convey that kind of motion blur. I ended up selecting this sequence as my favourite. I used pixel motion blur in After Effects to try and smooth out the people moving around and also reduce the amount of flicker from the spotlights. I think this helps draw more attention to the video projections on the surface of the main building that were kind of looping continuously. It created a really nice effect. For my 3rd worst time-lapse of the year is the view facing the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi. It really is an amazing location spot with sunset in the background and this really nice water feature that reflects the building. So nice that it actually attracts many tourists and Instagrammers. I thought I had the perfect spot, but unfortunately there was just a relentless stream of people walking past my lens. Too many in the end to edit out, so this project was eventually binned. While I was there, I thought maybe it was worth trying a different view, so I moved the camera closer to the water feature so that people wouldn't be able to walk in front of it. It was too little too late, unfortunately. I mean, it created a nice time-lapse sequence, but the one I wanted to capture was the sunset behind the building, and unfortunately that was just kind of ruined. Bit of a shame. So in third place for my best time-lapse sequences of the year goes to the Thiain village in the Al-Baha region of Saudi Arabia. In the southwestern region of Saudi, it's mostly quite a mountainous area, which makes it a great place for adventure and photography. The Thiain village is an ancient heritage village that dates back to the 8th century and has been restored and preserved by the Saudi government. I actually had a lot of technical issues to deal with in the post-production of this time-lapse. Kind of similar to the time-lapse I created in Bahrain. In the end, it turned out to be another video tutorial that I put together detailing how I managed to remove this annoying flickering light that almost ruined the entire sequence. In the end, it turned out to be a really, really good project. It was well worth the effort made to get to this location, which is quite a rural area in Saudi Arabia. Saudi is not an easy place to get around. All in all, it was definitely worth the visit. Now, a special mention goes to the time-lapse project I did when visiting the Prophet's Mosque in Medina in Saudi Arabia. Usually this place is considered off limits to non-Muslims and Westerners. Therefore, I had to be very careful with my choice of content creation. I managed to get a hotel room that was almost in the perfect position opposite the southern side of the mosque. I thought that this was probably my best chance to shoot a day to night style flow motion time-lapse sequence. I used 3 different lenses, the 15-35, the 28-70, and the 70-200 with the Canon R5 and R6 cameras. The title of the project is Religion Never Sleeps, and the idea was to show worshippers continually passing through the mosque throughout a 24-hour period. So not a perfect project due to the constraints involved with the production side, but also a really good experience and a huge learning curve producing this type of work. Another mention goes to my time in Positano on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. This was the first time I managed to fly the new DJI Mini 3 Pro. There are so many amazing views along the coastline and interesting photographic opportunities. However, it was during the evening when I decided to try a hyperlapse from the accommodation I was staying at. It wasn't perfect and also wasn't a disaster. Thankfully, the drone made it back safely as I was flying over a residential area. But this was my first experience of creating a hyperlapse using a drone. So all in all, for me, great experience. Wasn't the greatest piece of work I've ever done, but hopefully it's something that I will be doing more of in the future. So, moving on to my second worst time-lapse of the year. This has to be the Elephant Rock site in Al Ula, northwestern Saudi Arabia. This is a huge sandstone outcrop that has gradually formed over many hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years to look like a standing elephant. I visited quite a few times, and every time I ended up with an incredibly underwhelming time-lapse sequence. I've taken some really interesting photos around this area, but never managed to capture the incredible scenery in a time-lapse. I've tried on several occasions, some at sunset and some at night time, but this sequence was really badly composed. We had really bad weather and just simply not enough happening within the scene to make it interesting. So my second best time-lapse of the year goes to the view over the treasury in Petra. Now, there are several viewpoints overlooking the main attraction, but the best is a self-guided hike through the main site, passing the amphitheatre and royal tombs, turning right at the palace tombs. Then there is a set of steps, very steep, that will take you up and over the mountain back towards the Sikh walkway, overlooking the treasury rock carving. Viewpoint is actually under a tent that is maintained by a local Jordanian who serves tea, coffee, juices, and will help you with photo tips and kind of photo angles and stuff like that. So he's really helpful. We stayed here for almost an hour along with many other tourists. In this time I managed to create a few time-lapse sequences of various different angles. The view can be fairly dangerous, especially if there has been significant rainfall, so be very careful if you plan to visit. I had to hold the strap of my camera at all times to prevent the camera from falling over the edge. Anyway, it was a very worthwhile effort hiking all that way for an amazing view. So the unfortunate award for my worst time-lapse of the year, an absolutely epic fail, goes to the stargazing at the rock towers of Garameel. This is another place in Al Ula in western Saudi Arabia. The weather was quite bad at this time, which meant that stargazing and any form of astrophotography was very difficult to achieve. Anyway, I set up the camera to see what I could get, and the whole thing was a waste of time. The foreground was out of focus, and the cloud cover blocked out the night sky. It was a great area though for photography, so probably worth another try in the future. So now, here we are. Here's my favourite time-lapse sequence of the year, and it's not in the Middle East. When arriving in Positano on the Amalfi Coast, you're basically treated to a real-life postcard display. Everywhere is a picture in this amazing region of Italy. Because of that very reason, this area has had a lot of attention in recent years. An army of Instagrammers and YouTubers descend on this area every year, with social media now totally saturated with the same type of content and pictures from the same viewpoint. I wanted to find a different view, something that few others had attempted. So from researching the area, I found Latese di Positano viewpoint that overlooks the entire town. The hike would take well over an hour, trekking up some very steep steps and over some pretty rough ground. It was extremely hard work, but worth it for the views along the way. Something that you probably wouldn't get if you were trying to drive to the location, which you can do, but you've got to go completely around the whole area to get to it. The location sits 700 metres above Positano on a cliff face right above the main town. I managed to arrive just in time for sunset, so quickly set up the Canon R5 and used the RF 15-35. And in the process, I used my custom setup for auto time-lapse, a technique that I developed with the new Canon mirrorless cameras and have used on almost all of my time-lapse sequences throughout the year. I did this because I was really short on time. I just had to set something up very, very quickly and just capture the moment because the sun was dropping very, very quickly. What made this time-lapse most satisfying is that the view was almost exactly as I had imagined it would be. Also, the hike was so long and tiring. It was amazing to be rewarded with such a great view and a really amazing piece of work at the end. So I was really, really pleased. So that rounds up the best and worst of my time-lapse projects of 2022. Thanks for viewing this far. It's really, really appreciated. Hit the like and subscribe buttons for more of my content. Hopefully 2023 is just as rewarding as last year.